So welcome everyone to another episode of Podium Stories. Today I have a really special guest in the building. His name's Nemanja. We're going to talk about a few different things, but first let me introduce you guys. Nemanja is the founder of Funky Marketing. They help generate consistent revenue growth with cost-efficient strategies. They're based in Serbia, but work with companies around the world. And he is the founder of the IT community and co-working space in Pirot, his hometown. His background is in activism, youth work, and community building, which gives him, I think, a very unique experience and perspective. Nemanja, well, thank you so much for being here, man.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. It's an honor.
Yeah, of course. We've talked for a few weeks now to at least get on a call, and even better, we can record it and put it out as content. And I'm happy we got the chance to finally do it.
Yeah, definitely. We need to talk more. I mean, we've been exchanging ideas or the LinkedIn
Right.
for the last few months. So yeah.
So one of the things I think we have in common, and today I think we have a lot of things to talk about. We have to talk about content marketing, personal branding. There's a social media. There's a lot to talk about. But I don't want to start there. I want to start with actually sports, because I think one of the things that we have in common is our love for basketball, and even deeper, I think both of our fathers were basketball coaches, right?
Yeah. It's a unique experience.
It is.
We both have that kind of a history.
So
yeah, my father was a basketball player and a basketball coach. He played in the second league of ex-Yugoslavia. At the time, it was huge. He was actually in doing trials for Red Star when he was the best playmaker in the second league of Yugoslavia at the time. So they invited him there, but he didn't want to listen to the coach because they were leading 20 points with him doing what he knows how to do. So they say, go back to Pirot. At least that's how my uncle was telling the story.
Yeah, you never know how true these stories are, because I hear a lot of stories about how good my dad was, and I don't believe any of them.
Yeah. I mean, I know because other people are telling me he was good, and yeah, he. I mean, until the last day, he's not. He died in 2015, but he was able to play and shot 3 points even at that time. So
yeah, no, I relate. My dad beat me 1-on-1 until I was like 14 or 15, and then the day that I beat him, he never played 1-on-1 against me anymore. He was like, okay, we're done. But what were the lessons that you got out of sports? Because I think as an entrepreneur and business owner, for myself especially, sports is where I get the most of my inspiration and experience. I am a young entrepreneur, and I have to pull from somewhere, and basketball is where I take the lessons. So what were the things that sports taught you and that have helped you later on in life?
Yeah, I mean, definitely helped me a lot. Not only with some experience connected to the game and everything, but firstly, in the 90s, we couldn't travel anywhere, so the only way to travel was around the country, and basketball gave me that experience. Also, we were all part of the team, like at the time, watching like Grant Hill, Michael Jordan, all those guys, and also listening to hip hop, or singing some things.
Right.
It all helped develop a unique experience. And for the last few years while I was playing, like my father was my coach, and I was a captain of the team because at that time I was the oldest one in the team. And it's a unique experience. I mean, I started playing with like 7 years old, something like that. And at the time, we were all kids, and nobody was willing to give interviews to the television after the game, right? Local little television.
Right.
And when nobody wants to do it, I'm the captain, and my father is a coach, so I need to do it. And that gave me a unique experience because I started doing public speaking while I didn't even have 10.
Right.
So yeah, and I mean, until these days, like local televisions and media companies, they are just inviting me to the show. They say, okay, we are sure that you can come and talk for 50 minutes. That's it.
Because you've been
No
doing it
introduction.
since you were like 8 years old.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but teamwork and leadership are some things that I'm bringing from that period of time, definitely.
For sure, yeah, and because of the podcast, I've had the chance to like interview other entrepreneurs and CEOs, and you wouldn't believe how often that happens. Like how much of a sports inspiration and using that as a learning experience translates to the business field, right? For me as well, I think as a CEO, you're more of a leader than a manager, right? And being able to be a leader in the court and seeing other leaders, because when I was in college, I played NCAA basketball in the States. I was not the leader of my team. I was a freshman and there were like seniors.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing him, I remember this guy named AJ. He was the point guard, and we were doing weights before. And I've never done weights in Spain. We don't do weights, but in America they do so much
Yeah.
weights. And I was really struggling. And like he would yell at me to like do a bench press, and I couldn't do it. And because he was yelling, so I eventually had to like figure out my way to do it, right? And just seeing what a leader brings to the team, now I try to bring that to my company.
Yeah, I was just came to my mind because you're from Spain, and I don't know, like a year ago, I was reading a great story about Coach Snyder from Utah Jazz.
Yeah,
How he helped Ricky Rubio go into the team and develop the game that got Utah Jazz in the position when they are now. So they are
yeah,
like in the top 5 teams in the Western Conference.
yeah. Ricky, he is like somebody who hasn't had like he started playing professional when he was 14. So like, and
Yeah,
he
I know.
played. I was watching the other day. As you can see, this podcast is very conversational and we branch out. But I was watching the other day the Olympic Games of 2008, I believe, where the final was Spain against United States. And our starting point guard was Ricky Rubio at the age of 17. And he was
Yeah,
going against Chris Paul. And the first play, he goes on a fast break and he does a behind the back pass to Pau Gasol for a dunk. And I was like, I cannot believe this kid with 17 years old is going
yeah.
against the best players in the world and like doing behind the back pass.
That's the confidence. I mean, all those guys like Teodosic, Mačvan, all the others from Serbia, they all developed their skills while playing um, in their young age.
Right.
I mean, they won some medals, trophies, MVPs, and just by challenging themselves, they got into the position where they are now amongst the best players in the world.
For sure. What do you think it's about the Eastern, about the Serbians especially, but also other countries around, about the mentality that you guys have towards sports? Because like you guys are extremely competitive individuals, and you can see that on your sports team, not just in basketball, but in different sports. So what do you think that makes you guys, or that competitiveness comes from?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I don't know. We have something that's called INAT.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how to translate it, but when all odds are against you, you start to do your best,
Right.
right? And that's how it is in sports and in everything. And kids are playing everywhere basketball. It's everywhere now. It was also Djokovic, Tipsarevic, so
Right.
tennis players. And I mean, we are the best nation in water polo in the history.
Yeah.
And we have like 2 pools in the country. I mean, it's unbelievable. Teams don't have where to train, actually.
Right.
But
And even with basketball, right? Like you guys have super competitive teams in across different sports, and there's not that many people living in Serbia. So you guys are either there's a genetics part, but also I think a mentality part of like
Yeah,
our
I mean,
country has struggled before, and then we come
actually,
across.
yesterday or day before was the day when Djordjevic hit the 3 point and Partizan won the EuroLeague title for the first time.
Against Juventud, against Spain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
My
And
dad
and
was
it was
in the stadium that day.
nice.
Yeah, my parents were watching that game on the stadium.
It was like the ultimate David against Goliath
Right.
game. And yeah, I mean, Djordjevic is a great guy. I've been spending summers on the basketball camps, and I've been playing in team with him, with Bodiroga, the other
Right.
guys, because they were mixing with us youngsters,
Yeah.
and it's like a great experience. But yesterday or day before, like Danilovic, who is Sasha
Yep.
Danilovic? Yeah.
Yeah.
His daughter now is a tennis player.
Okay.
And she was watching for the first time the game of 1995 when we won the Europe Championship against Lithuania
Uh-huh.
at the time. And after we have isolation and everything, we couldn't compete, so we went to the whole other struggle to beat, I don't know, Bulgaria to get there, and nobody knew uh, what are our capacities and what can be done.
Yeah.
And like her comment was, guys, how did you stay normal after watching that game? Because there's famous part of the game where her father Danilovic dunks over Sabonis, and that was like the ultimate part when we actually make them surrender. So
Right. Yeah, because Sabonis was like their guy. Sabonis was, I mean, he still is one of the best European players to ever play.
yeah, first versatile center
Exactly.
that
A
ever
really good
played in
passer.
Yeah, I think Jokic is the better version now,
Yeah, it's the
and also
21st
also
century.
his son. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the so you and I, Nemanja, I think we first met on LinkedIn and we've interacted on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. And I'm really happy that we now have the chance to do this podcast live. But um, I think we're proof, or we're a symbol of how we have changed the way we communicate and the way we do business, and how we have adapted to social media, especially in B2B, to connect with other people and network as well, and actually build real relationships. And now we can talk about Sabonis later on, right? So tell me a bit more about the impact of social media in your B2B communications, and how you're meeting new people and interacting with new people and using it to also acquire clients as well.
Yeah, basically, social media and the way I do it got me, I think, every single job I have, and not every single client, but like 80% of them.
Right.
Because I was always like open.
Mm-hmm.
How do they call it? Like thinking in public.
Yeah.
When I was struggling with something, when I wanted to achieve, also sharing the results, sharing some positive, some negative experiences, and people really get attached to it, because we are all not perfect. We don't have only positive stories. We also have some negative stories. And it was, I got a funny story when I was a GM of a Canadian agency back in like 2017, 18. We were working only with companies, like half of the people in the company were in Serbia, half of them were in US and Canada.
Gotcha.
And we were working only with US, Australia, and Canadian companies. And I got a message on LinkedIn from a lady who was the director of new technologies in Ringer Axel Springer, the biggest media groupation in Europe.
Yep.
And the message was like a girl who was working with them doing SEO and SEM just moved to Germany, and they needed to find somebody who can help them with those things. And they asked her, who should we call? And she said, call Nemanja. And I don't know the girl. Know her from the social media. She saw the results, she saw what I'm doing, and the message from the lady who was a director was, I know you're not working with Serbian companies, but God damn it, for Ringer Axel Springer, you might want to change it. So yeah, that was my first client from Serbia, actually, just in 2018. And I worked with 2 months with them. I left the company, left Ringer Axel Springer to that agency and moved to specialize in some other things. But definitely being able to communicate, to create relationships, that's I think number one thing today.
And we should feel fortunate about that, right? Because I was raised in the beginning of the internet, but all my teenage years were already in the internet era. So I kind of take it for granted. But when I start thinking about it, this was not possible 20 years ago, right? Like we are one DM away, one comment away, one cold email even away from like reaching out to top CEOs, top decision makers.
Exactly.
And building a one-on-one relationship, right? And
it's pretty much the same as it was offline, but we didn't notice it.
Yeah.
Like I got the first job in an agency 2 years after the guy who is running the agency saw me.
Right.
So he saw me on a conference in another city, and 2 years after that, when I was like, I didn't have a job, I was between jobs, had some family issue situation, and I didn't know what the hell I'm going to do with myself.
Right.
And he called, what do you know about marketing? I saw you 2 years ago when I was in a youth work and doing some activism stuff.
Yep.
And that's how I got over there. And after 13 months, I became the GM of the company because of the previous experience.
Yeah, it's like you say, right? It's what we used to do offline, but at scale. Because right now, we can do it from whatever we want and start building out relationships. You're in Serbia, I'm in Barcelona. It can be in America, it can be in South America, whatever it is.
Exactly.
And we have scaled that. Because before, word of mouth was only like your city and the one conference that you go to. But now, word of mouth with the internet is at scale. And I think we often forget about how lucky we are to have it, and we take it for granted.
Exactly. I mean, you probably went through it as I did when I knew what I want to do, and I knew it was coming, but I needed to wait to prepare myself and to wait. I mean, it wasn't easy to explain to the family, parents, and everybody. Like I was considered somebody who is jobless, but I had more skills than all of them.
Right.
I just needed to wait for a few months or a year for that to happen.
You're right. You're right. I had the same thing. I started writing online. I had a job I graduated with my college degree in the States, and I started working in finance in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is like a big banking system. And after a month, I quit and came to Spain. And I started writing online on Quora, Medium, these different platforms. And to the people around me, I was jobless. I was unemployed. But I knew that it was going to come at one point or another, right? And then I started getting a couple million views on Quora and inbound people of asking me to write for them as a ghostwriter, which then it turned into my personal branding agency right now. But you have to wait, and if you let judgment of others push you down, then you don't have the patience to wait, right?
Yeah, that's a great start. You went from writing and from the content into the game. That's great.
And I didn't even know there was like content marketing at that point. I was just writing. I started a couple of businesses that didn't work out, and I was just writing about the failures of mine, and that turned into the business. Something that I also want to ask you, and I was reading about this earlier today, that there seems to be a fight between sales and marketing. both from like where do we allocate our budget in a company, where both from like how many people do we need to distribute for each division. How do you think of that fight, or is there even a fight between sales and marketing? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there is a fight because marketers are doing marketing like sales, and sales guy are getting not quality leads.
Right.
So yeah, but it shouldn't be in a fight. I mean, most of the companies don't put things, uh, don't structure things as they should.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, majority of them are trying to get sales from the very beginning to grow, but that's marketing's job, and sales are here to just amplify the growth and take them to the next level. That should be uh, the process. And uh, basically how things are right now, like I think it's changing because of the crisis and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody were doing outbound,
Right.
like marketing, sales, both of those departments was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Even if it's cold calling, especially in SaaS software companies,
Mm-hmm.
outsourcing. Uh, so yeah, basically all of them were doing the same. And marketing job was just to get the number of leads. They were measured by the number of leads, not by the quality of them. That's how the bonuses are set up and everything else, and nothing happens. I mean, if we only get the leads when they are ready to buy to the sales, it will be a totally different situation. They will say, okay, marketing guys are finally doing something.
Right.
And when they do that, like the people from sales, we wouldn't need like 10 people in sales.
Right.
Only like two of them who have the most experience and who can close everything. When you have like 10 of them, it means that some of them are not that good. They are probably just beginning, so not every customer experience is great.
Yeah.
And if those two are closing everything, so we have more revenue. When we have more revenue, we can get it back to develop like the product, the whole business, and we are growing.
Right. So and I 100% agree with you, because the other aspect is when you bring in too many SDRs or closers, that also means that your expenses go up and your overhead goes up.
It's
Which,
also how do you measure the sales, people
yeah.
in sales, like
So how should we measure it? What are the metrics that we should
I mean, what I'm seeing
look for?
now is that we cannot measure them as we were, like the number of calls, let's say.
Right.
But because people are spending like the whole day on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and that cannot be measured. Like that time can't be measured. But what can be measured is like how many meaningful relationships we have started, or how many of those relationships actually we got on the call.
Yeah.
So those are the things that we can measure, and we need to get marketing both in sales aligned with the revenue. But we don't need to measure every little piece of the content like we do now. Like not every ebook, not every piece of content should be measured, because
Right.
it won't get us quality leads or
Yeah, it
whatever.
incentivizes the wrong behaviors, really.
Yeah, I mean, and the other perspective of that is do we have a CEO or somebody who is running the company who believes in marketing?
Right.
That's so important, because that is the main advantage that the company had. Like we were doing a lead generation companies for campaigns for a company which is one of the biggest in Europe selling dental products.
Mm-hmm.
And we got them in like 2 months, 16,000 leads, but they weren't just like MQLs,
Right.
because we qualify them, also we classify them, so they knew exactly which products they can sell to them, what kind of problems do they have, where did they find out about the product, about the company. And what happens, they got the new director. um, she was the one who was working in sales, with
I
the
see.
sales background.
Yeah.
And for her, like drip, which we were using for the campaigns and to all the leads were there, she considered it as an expense. So
Wow.
she demanded that we delete all the leads.
Wow. That's crazy. And
Yeah,
it should be the other way, right? Because as a salesperson, I've never been a salesperson, so take this with a grain of salt. But if I'm a closer, what I want is people who are ready to buy. Because one, it saves me time to get on calls that are not qualified,
of course.
or that I don't want to buy, or that I'm not going to be able to sell them my solution. And two, it means that my conversion rate goes up, and the deal cycle is shorter, which means that I
Exactly.
make more money as a salesman, right? So that's why when we align, I think, marketing and sales, we both people should be happy, both the marketer and the closeman. One of the problems, I think, and you tell me if you've seen this, is that when we stop going for volume of leads, salespeople and CEOs who, like you said, don't believe in marketing get a bit scared, because like they go from like 1,000 leads a month to 100, and they're much better quality, but they see that number and then they're like, oh fuck, what are we going down, right? So is that something that you think stops companies from aligning on revenue and going after other metrics other than volume of leads?
Yeah, I mean, one thing you mentioned, I will start from the beginning of your part, is the efficiency.
Right.
If we do things the right way, it rises the efficiency. That's also an important KPI. And I mean, if you are the CEO, you can see the efficiency going up. And
Right.
if you're doing things the right way, you can see the revenue goes up, even though you have smaller volume of leads. So that's how you see the change. But I mean, that's also one thing that we really want to talk about. It's you need to have somebody who can analyze the data,
Right.
who can actually present you the data. I mean, in the IT companies, most of the time, founders, maybe not CEOs, but founders are the ones who are coming from the development side.
Right.
So they don't know how to maybe read the data. They need somebody who can translate that to their terms. I mean, I was just few days before, I was talking with a friend who is working with a huge international IT company, and that is exactly the case.
Right.
So we need to talk their language. Not only did we need to be able to communicate the right way with the potential clients and customers, but also within the company.
That's such a fucking
There
good
is
point.
one thing that who's doing that? Drift is
Drift.
doing that.
Yeah.
And that is selling to their own team, doing marketing for their own team. I mean, you need to sell your idea to your team so they can go outside of the company and continue the job.
That's such a great point, because as marketers, I think we tend to overcomplicate stuff and use too many buzzwords that people who are not marketers understand. And like you said, a lot of these founders are not marketers at their heart. They're uh, usually technical founders, especially when you work with a lot of SaaS companies, which we don't do that much, but I am empathetic to that, and we have to communicate empathically to how they want to be communicated to. So that's a really good point that I haven't seen people talk about, and it's such an interest. I think that it's very valuable for marketers that
Yeah,
work with clients.
there's a little book called It Won't Scale from Drift.
Yeah.
What happened? Like in the previous company, when I was like director of operation and the second guy in the company, we bought a book, Conversational Marketing, from Drift, and 2 weeks after that, they send us a little book for free from US to Serbia. It won't scale, like it has like 40 pages,
Right.
but they wrote like 40 things they did to get to the hyper growth.
I love that.
It's fantastic. I mean, it's available for buying or for download. I don't know, but
Yeah, I will put a link in the description on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this. And one of the things that we mentioned is the relationship with data. And I did want to talk about this because I have a cognitive dissonance. I'm conflicted with this, right? Because I know how important data is, but I also know that there's things that cannot be measured. So as a marketer, especially in terms of content, I always say, right, like, what's the ROI of a LinkedIn post? I don't know and I don't care. But overall, of the whole content marketing strategy on the long term, I do care of the ROI because I also want to present it to the client. So how do you see between data and qualitative intuition of like how things are performing?
Yeah, I mean, you need both, definitely. I mean, it would be disrespectful to not use all the data that you have today,
Right.
to improve what you do, and also listen to your intuition, to your inner voice. It's also an important point. I mean, yeah, when we started like Funky Marketing, I didn't know in which direction we were going. I just knew that I wanted to go outside of the performance marketing because I've been specializing in it for the last 2 years, and I want to go outside of it. And we started like wide, but from what I was doing on my LinkedIn and for some other people, I saw how things are going, and then there's a gap. There's a gap in B2B, some industry, and I have experience in both B2B and B2C. And after like 3 months, even before I registered the company, I set up the direction where I want to go. But it was based on my intuition and from what I'm seeing at my personal profile.
Right.
But I knew that nobody is doing that, and I can go. And that intuition was based on some things that we have done before, that I initiated in a company where I was like leading the team.
Mm-hmm.
Even like, I don't know. I will remember. Let's continue the conversation, but I will remember what I wanted to say.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting, right? Because as a basketball player, I relate this to basketball. You get the stats.
Yeah, Houston
right?
Rockets.
Yeah, and you get the stats, right? And you, after the game, you look and you're like, okay, I got 15 points, 12 rebounds, 5 steals. I played great. But you don't see, there's things that you don't see, right? You don't see the guy that dove for the ball 3 times, and those were 3 baskets that changed the whole game. Or you don't see the guy who didn't turn the ball over, and that helped the team win in the clutch. A basket in the last 1 minute doesn't mean the basket equally as the basket in the first minute. Or you don't see the guy who didn't play at all, but was cheering for his teammates and helped them stay positive. So like, it's that same type of relationship. There's things that you can measure, and you should look at that and track them. But there's other things that you cannot see on a number.
Yeah.
Like helping people, you cannot put a number on that. I can put a LinkedIn post, or you can put a LinkedIn post, and you change someone's business, and you don't know, it's one view, but it's not one view, right?
Exactly. It's not about how many views, how big of a reach you have. It's about who's seeing the content, who's consuming the content. Even more important.
Right.
But I got the thought that I lost a minute ago.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are new to the market, you have the new product or new service, you can get all the data that you want. Like, you can do the service, ask people, but they won't give you the solution to their problems because it doesn't exist.
Right.
if you have it and it's new. They will just give you the answers they know, and if they don't get the solutions, they will be pissed on
Right.
you,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
It's
And
like if I
that's
wanted a faster, if when Henry Ford said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have asked me for a faster horse, not a car.
exactly. I mean, that's one of the reasons smart companies create communities before they go into creating product or services. They get to know their ideal clients. They get them in the community. They get them to chat with each other to get to
Right.
know, and they just see the patterns, the data, and then they go to creating products or services.
100%. And one of the things that I think you and I are very bullish on, and we really believe in, is when it comes to building relationships, right? Not only with our potential clients, but with people in the market who we think there's something valuable that we can share with them and that they can share back with us. But at the same time, there's a big trend that I've seen over the last few years, that it's automation and how can we scale things, right? We were talking about before about the book, This One Scale. And relationships are something that it's hard to scale. But a lot of
Exactly.
companies want to grow so fast that they really push for automation. So how do you balance automation and relationships? And I know you've had some insights on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, relationships were everything for
Right.
me. And on the other side, I spent last 2 years focusing on marketing automation, website personalization, lead generation, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
I moved from the role when I was like the GM to go and to learn those certain things because I felt like I need to understand
Right.
those things better. And when I did, I saw that it has a plateau. Like you
I
can
see.
do performance marketing up to one point, but uh, over that, to be able to grow more, you need a brand, you need a story, you need relationships, you need content, all those other things.
Right.
And I mean, with performance marketing, you can get just like 2 or 3% of the people who are ready to act right now.
Yeah.
And when it comes to automation, I'm a fan of automation, but if you can automate things that you would do anyway, it will just help you save time.
Right.
Not like automating
Yeah. What are
sales
the
as you
things that
would
we don't
do.
what are the things that you would not automate?
Yeah, I mean, right now, how people are doing sales on LinkedIn is using Sales Navigator and some tools outside of LinkedIn and just spamming people with outbound messages. They're
Right.
doing the same as they're doing with email.
Yeah.
And uh, few points on that is basically most of the accounts on LinkedIn are not active. So they are just wasting money and time. And the other thing is out of the sudden when you didn't create a relationship with a person and you just go ahead and start selling, it's something that won't work. Also, it got to the point where like if somebody's sending me a connection request and putting a message, most of the time I'm not accepting it because they know they will offer something to me.
Right.
So it goes in the other direction. But if you can, I don't know, if you can automate some things when it comes to like lead nurturing,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if you can automate like chatbots on the website which can create a meaningful conversation. I'm all about that
It's
because
it's a
that's
good
why now we
balance.
have AI, machine learning, because it can recognize the exact time when do you need a live person to get into the conversation.
Right. Yeah. It's a good balance to find, and I think it's interesting because yesterday I was writing a few cold emails for people to be on the podcast, and to write one good cold email that was personalized, it took me like 45
Yeah,
minutes to
I
an
saw the
hour,
post.
right? And I was like, I don't know if I'm really slow writer or it just takes time, because I don't usually write cold emails because I do a lot of content. But I wanted to like reach out to them, and I was like, I don't know if it's me or not, right? And people chipped in, and when you are doing actual personalization, things take time, and you have to be okay with that.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a slight difference between what the personalization is.
Right.
Like today, people think of personalization as just adding uh, smart data that you have, like the name,
For sure.
the demographics,
Yeah.
interest, but that's not it. That's about knowing your customers.
Right.
And I mean, to be able to reach out to someone, I mean, you're not sending a bulk of emails in this exact
Yeah.
example. Like you need to do the research of that person, and then you know that he or she is the one you want on the podcast, and then you reach out to them.
Yeah.
So you need the time to get all the information, to do the research.
Yeah, and I thought about you because I was reaching to this guy. Hopefully, he'll be on the podcast soon. And after like 30 minutes of research, and like I don't want to spend 30 minutes looking through all interviews of this guy, but I did want him to be on the podcast. I saw that he was a Spurs fan, so I reached out to him, and the first line was from a scale of 0 to 10, how underrated do you think Manu Ginobili's career was? And like you cannot put that through, you cannot automate that. Like there's things that you cannot just replace. Um,
Yeah,
and I did think about you
I
yesterday.
remember in 2018 we were just trying to add the sales to the new customer acquisition programs in the agency, because most of the leads were coming from referral.
Mm-hmm.
We were reaching out to people on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
but at the same time we were following up with them on Twitter. And
Right.
like, if a guy is, I don't know, a lawyer or some professional on LinkedIn, on Twitter, it's just a regular guy who likes fishing, and
Right.
we get into talking about fishing, and that's how we get the sale.
Right. Yeah, you get the connection, and then it's something that there's no way that you could like automate that. So
Yeah.
I do think we're very aligned on that. And one of the other things we have discussed, I believe, over the last few weeks, is how do you get people to like consume your content through amplification channels? So like paid ads, organic outreach, because I see a lot of the problems with content comes from I put out a great piece of content but nobody sees it. So how do you think we can overcome that? How can we get people, the right people, to like consume our content?
Yeah, that's a problem that so many B2B companies have. First of all, they're writing great content,
Mm-hmm.
but great content for the SEO,
Right.
because that's how it was done during the last 10 years. So,
Facts.
and they are doing great. Their organic reach is amazing and it's growing each day. But those people who are reacting to that are not somebody who's gonna be a client. Like, I'm right now working with a company who is one of the top 3 companies in the this like called Western Balkans,
Mm-hmm.
doing localization and translation.
Okay.
And they have great content. It's on why people are coming to the website through the content that is connected with translation. Like, why this is something, why the word is said like that in Croatia and not like that in Serbia,
Right.
you know? And those are not the people who they want as a client. They are working with enterprises because they are working in with some white papers, uh, law documents, those kind of things, and they don't need those kind of people.
Right.
And what they can do is they can, if they already have content, in this case, they are reshaping it and making it more consumable.
I see.
Let's say more available for people to consume. And in case the company doesn't have a content, it needs to be created with a consuming in mind, with the consumer.
Right.
So that's how we need to create the content, to be specific and to have in mind that we are living in a world that we are all like, not right now when we are in crisis, but outside of that, we are all traveling in the movement all the time, using mobile. So that all have to be imported in the content creation strategy.
I
So
agree.
we need a content which will make a CEO of the company consume it fast and have certain value that's enough that he can remember it, and when they have a need, go and
They're top
look
of
for
mind.
us.
They're top of mind, 100%. The other thing that I would add is it doesn't, and we've mentioned this before, but like the number of views is not predicative of great content, because like we can put out platitudes on LinkedIn or Twitter, and we're gonna get more views and more likes and more retweets. But at the end of the day, we want results. So like one of the things we should optimize for on our content as well is results. And if you get 100 views, but there are 100 of your exact target clients, then it's a success. But versus getting 1,000 with no intent of buying.
Yeah,
But
it's connected to whom you are connecting with, who is consuming the content. I mean, LinkedIn is great if you want to organically know who is consuming your content, but outside of the LinkedIn, you need paid ads to be able to control who is consuming the content.
so tell me a bit more about paid ads and content, because that's something that I think it's really interesting, and it's going to be the future of content distribution. So tell me what you've seen that can work there, because I know you have experience with a bit of both.
Yeah, I mean, we just need to shift the mindset from trying to get people to buy over social media to trying to get people to consume content on social media, because social media is all those platforms are push platforms.
Right.
We're pushing content towards people. Google is a pull platform. When we can get the content over there, they will find it if they search it. But on let's say Facebook, Instagram, we need to get the right content to those people, and even not asking them to a CTA to go and schedule a call or get a quote or whatever it is, try a demo. It's more of a, watch this video, I'm giving you value right now. It can be a research, it can be a case study, it can be just like stats, problem, solution.
Yeah.
Or I mean, videos are great for that, and um, I'm seeing a trend that more and more decision makers and the companies overall are investing in video content, which is great. And if you create like in 3 months one huge piece of video content, you can repurpose it in like multiple pieces of content,
I love
and
that.
you don't even need like to invest, I don't know how many time or money into creating it. I mean, you can just organize small events that
Mm-hmm.
are free or charge a little, and you can record everything. You invite guests from the certain industry. Let's say I want to learn about localization and translation,
Yeah.
or I want to learn about, I don't know, whom will I work with? Broadband or telephony. I'm
Right.
working in Britain with broadband and telephony. I will invite CMOs of those other companies and let them share the experience. It's just the same as the podcast,
Absolutely.
right? And we will have the questions from the audience. We will have, I will ask whatever do I want to learn, and go ahead and implement it. I mean, Dave Gerhardt is doing that as a new guy in e-commerce with Privy
Yeah.
podcast, right? He's inviting people to school him about the e-commerce topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the reason why I started this podcast as well. So a couple more questions I wanted to ask you, Nemanja.
Just a second.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let's finish the circle. So
Oh,
when
yeah,
they
yeah. My
consume
bad.
when they consume the content, what happens then? They if it's the decision maker, they they might go to the website and check us out, or like uh, schedule a call, reach out, whatever. If it's somebody who is not a decision maker and he feels like it's a valuable content, they will go to those people directly, or to others who are above them in the company,
Yeah.
and it will take time to get to decision maker. But at one time, somebody is gonna schedule a call, let's say, and we see that when the revenue grows.
Right.
And it needs some time so we can see the pattern, because we have no idea when this guy is going and look for us. And on the other hand, if we do it on the LinkedIn with getting the right connections and reaching out to the right people, the difference is they're going to reach out to the specific person. Like they're going to try to find Marti instead of the name of your company.
Right.
That's how they will get to the company over your name.
Yeah.
So that's also one other aspect of it. Why do we need to involve like the decision makers in content creation thing?
So that actually leads me to the next question that I wanted to ask you. Of in case you don't know, my personal branding agency focuses a lot with B2B CEOs, and we help them grow their personal brand and create content. So what advice or what recommendations, as someone who's a CEO of a company and who creates a lot of content for himself, would you give to other CEOs, just like you said, to involve them in the content creation part of their business?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to that, the biggest obstacle is always the time.
Right.
All of them are super busy. They don't have time. So at one point you need, from my experience, you need to create at least few pieces of content for them until they get in touch with it and they get natural and they relax, so they can start actually creating it. I think you're doing a great job because you're going besides LinkedIn on Twitter.
Yeah.
Because Twitter is a place when you actually can see what the competitors are doing, what B2B companies are doing. Basically, what we like to say in Serbia, who's bigger, right? On Twitter.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's great for that. But on LinkedIn, basically LinkedIn is blowing up because CEOs, entrepreneurs, all those people that we were just reading in articles started to share their experiences, their stories, all those things, their struggles. And they showed us that they have the same problems as we have. And this is exactly the pattern. So thought leadership is possibly the way to create content, but it's not for everybody. Like, I mean, I'm seeing people who are not top leaders creating top leadership content, and it's not working in the right way. So basically, what I recommend is that they get to the content creation through responding to comments first.
Oh, good point.
Not to the they would usually go, one of the first things they would do is they would go to the other people from their company and comment on their post. That's totally wrong. So commenting on the post of the people who are their target audience, and then but not just commenting like any other comment, but just bringing the value, going deep. And when we see which comment is getting traction, that's when we know that we need to expand on the topic in their post.
This is such a good point that you're giving, because
it's totally organic way to see what works, if there's interest around something, and just going all in. And through that, they become more relaxed to share their stories and go into certain things.
For sure. And this is a great way to like steal attention as well, because you're using the attention of somebody who has a bigger audience than you. You get a really good comment that becomes the first comment in the list if it's good, and then you're getting all the audience that the bigger guy is getting. So that's a really good advice.
One other thing is going all in on values, on certain values. A great example are the guys from the base camp. Like, they are creating attention on Twitter that is similar to 100 other companies together,
Right.
because they are talking about certain values that they have. They go all against any kind of bullshit out there,
Yeah,
and they are willing to spend hours and hours explaining to people why does some things matter.
for sure. We're actually
And
working
people
with a
appreciate that.
company who, with an agency in the States that are very mission driven, and we have just started working with them. And I do think it's going to be a really big success if we're consistent, just because they're very real to what they stand for. And I think people are attracted to that.
Yeah, exactly. And from nobody is doing that. It's an addition to the CEO started being active.
Yeah,
It's getting the company or the small teams around decision makers started being active. I mean, Drip did that like 2 years ago or something like that. They blow everywhere on LinkedIn. Um, we did that in default design when I worked there. We just got everybody in the agency involved around topics that they are familiar with and that they are the best at. So copywriter was writing about writing a copy.
right.
Designer was doing design. I was talking about operations, about strategies, and the CEO was sharing insights, results, those
Yeah,
kind of things. And uh, my idea was actually my picture on profile picture on LinkedIn is from that time.
mm,
I wanted all of us to have the same profile pictures when on one side is the face and on the other side I asked copywriter to write a sentence which described each one of us.
I love that.
And people started to recognize the pattern. Even some of them asked me where can they find the template to
Right.
actually do it for their companies. So it's some small things that can get the whole thing going. I mean, in 2017 when Facebook was moving from the news feed, like zero reach in the news feed, people
Yeah,
were scared. What are we going to do? And this is where the shift happens when employees of the company are started to becoming the biggest influencers of that company.
for sure.
So imagine now IT company with like, I don't know, 100 people.
Hmm.
If like third of that are the people who are actively creating their own personal brand and talking about values and those other things, and on the other hand sharing few things and being public with the company they are working at.
Yeah.
Imagine the attention that the company is getting.
You make such a good point here. And this is something that I don't know that much to talk about yet, but it's something that I really believe in. How you, as a CEO, involve the rest of your team to start creating content, especially for B2B companies on LinkedIn. If you have, like you said, 30 people creating content and they average 30,000 views a month, now you have almost 1 billion views organic for no expense on LinkedIn per month that you're
Exactly.
getting, right? So how and I think there's an opportunity here for somebody to like go to companies and teach them and do a workshop of here's how you can implement that. You're doing that, all
Already
right?
implementing
Well,
it.
now you guys know who to go to. So, Nemanja, the last question that I wanted to ask you, I try to ask this to everybody. If you could go back in time and talk to 23-year-old Nemanja, what would you start? Because I'm 23 right now. I've been running the business for a couple of years. Um, but I like to hear people who are further ahead from me to see what they would tell themselves. So I love to know what you would whisper to your own ear if you were 23 again.
Yeah, I first wanted to say congratulations. Like you are younger than me, and you are doing great stuff, and you are on a great way to actually achieving more things. I mean,
I
I'm
appreciate it.
always late because like we have wars in the 90s when I couldn't travel, so
Right.
I got into the youth work to give the youngsters behind me a chance to travel.
Right.
themselves and to have some experiences.
For sure.
But when I was 23 at the time, I figured out that I won't drop out from the college. I was studying marketing,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't. I have like 2 out of 35 exams on marketing.
Gotcha.
So I learned. I mean, I learned organizational company organization. That's the
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I learned and it helped me. But I figure out what I would recommend to myself is going to the business earlier, because I was in a non-profit sector,
I see.
and you know everything depends on a project. Is somebody going to approve the project? It's
Right.
all depending on somebody else. But when I switched and got into the business field, I, especially nowadays, you can sell anything,
Right.
and it's great that you are depending only on yourself. You can bet on yourself and do some things. And there's one sentence that's getting me uh, to to uh, to go out every day and like do what I love to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I got it from the guy who started like the civil sector in Serbia. We got, as a youth organization, we got the biggest award in Serbia for youth policies 2 years in a row. And I asked him, the second year we got it, I asked him what's next. You know, like
Right.
that's the one chapter. What's next? And he told me like the fight never stops. Fight for good never stops. So what I'm trying to do right now is to get, in a way, marketing to the place where it belongs. Like it's not the madman marketing that was wrong because it was one-dimensional communication, and we still have those certain things. Like many people are considering, I don't know if it's like that, maybe not in the US and
Mm-hmm.
Canada, but here in Europe, it largely is. People are mixing marketing with advertising,
Yeah.
and advertising is just a part of the marketing. And those things still need to go back to the place where they are more natural. It's all those things that we talked about, like more inbound content marketing, giving real values. Those are all things that are important, and the crisis is amplifying people starting to implement those things.
I like that. Awesome, Nemanja. I thought that was a really good episode today. I thank you so much for taking the time and doing this. I think we touched on many different topics that we've been discussing through messages for a while, but now we had the chance to like go really in depth, and we should do this again soon. Before we go, where should people reach out to you? Can you give me like your website URL and Twitter, LinkedIn profile? Maybe we'll also link it on the description. But
Yeah, I mean, funkymarketing.net is the website. They have everything over there. Like I like to do a lot of copy on the website so people can really understand what it is all about. Also, everywhere on social media, look for Nemanja Zivkovic marketing or Dilimanac. I don't know if I can spell that, but you will get the link.
I'll
It's
link
my,
it.
yeah, it's interesting. That's my nickname. It was the nickname of my father, and there's a whole family over there. And the meaning, they told me it means like the guardians of the city, because the family was living in the entrance and in the exit of the city.
I love
So
that.
it's like interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're listening, thank you so much. Feel free to subscribe and share or don't, whatever you guys want. And Nemanja, again, thank you so much for being here, man.
Yeah, thank you. See you on Partizan Red Star Derby soon.
Absolutely. When this isolation goes away, I'm coming. We're gonna do a podcast in person. Anyway, guys, thank you guys so much for listening. All right, bye.